From the moment the Nintendo Switch was confirmed to be a home console handheld hybrid, fans were actually really ecstatic to play classic games on it, as the games would be virtually the same as they've been on all other past platforms, but now you'd be able to seamlessly play them on your TV or while on the go. But as we learned more about the rollout of classic games on Switch, a lot of people, their hype died down over time. After having the amazing virtual consoles on both the Wii and the Wii U, with tons of games from all different eras, we were only going to be getting NES games at first, and it was going to be through this Nintendo Online service, where you pay $20 for the year and get access to the entire catalog of games, which in terms of the amount you spend versus what you get, it's great, but you're then subjected to staying subscribed to the service, or you lose access to all your games. Rather, with the old virtual console approach, you just paid once for the games you wanted, and then we're done. And for the first year, we saw them trickle out more NES games, but I think overall this was a pretty pathetic lineup to start with, again, especially considering what players had left behind on previous consoles. And if the like-to-dislike ratio on Nintendo's announcement videos for some of these games are anything to go off of, I wasn't the only one that felt this way. But then, the 1-year anniversary came and they added Super Nintendo games to the service and gave us a pretty good offering at the outset. It seemed like things were finally starting to ramp up for Nintendo Online as players expected more SNES games to be added regularly, as well as more consoles being added later. But it's been radio silence on this front ever since the big update. Until just last night, 3 months later, Nintendo dropped a trailer advertising 6 new additions coming later this month, 4 from the SNES and 2 from the NES. It's a pretty good lineup too. On the SNES side, we have the previously unreleased, well, before the SNES Classic obviously, Star Fox 2, as well as Super Punch-Out, Breath of Fire 2, and Kirby Superstar. On the NES side, we've got Crystalis and Journey to Silius. Yeah, these are actually some fantastic games. And while this announcement was surely intended to give a little jolt of excitement towards the Nintendo Online library, it also seems to have sort of reignited these discussions and debates surrounding it and how Nintendo has delivered on this classic games offering so far, and that's why I wanted to discuss it today. I will start by saying the actual selection of games, which games they've chosen to put on here, is phenomenal. A ton of key titles in here, with very few that I would consider like filler. But man, when you consider that this is going to be it for 2019, and sure, I don't know what will come early next year, but I doubt it'll be anything major, and then bam, in March, the Switch will be 3 years old. We're 3 years in. Keep in mind, it was about 6 years between the release of the Wii and the Wii U. So we're already about halfway to that point. And it's like, when these new games come out, that will bring the total to 50 NES games and 24 SNES games, making it 74 games on the service in total. Also, that's 0 N64 games, 0 GameCube games, 0 Wii, you get the idea. And it's not like it's hard to get these ROMs ported over. We've seen modders in their own homes add all sorts of games to the Switch on their own. Nintendo is a big company, so that's not the issue. But there are some valid reasons to have more staggered releases. For one, when it comes to third-party games, more and more companies are doing this on their own nowadays. We have stuff like the Mega Man collections, Castlevania collection, etc. So while some of these games aren't on the service, that's because their publishers are making them available in other ways. And of course, anything Nintendo doesn't have the rights to, they have to pursue those rights holders and make a deal with them, which isn't always easy. But obviously, there is still plenty of games from their own back catalog they could be adding to the service, even still from these two console eras. And that's actually pretty easy to explain too. Nintendo likes to do these sporadic releases to generate excitement, as I referred to earlier, around these games. Nintendo probably could have put fairly easily all of the NES games and all of the SNES games they have the rights to in there on day one. But then you wouldn't be able to have these little announcements like saying, oh, Star Fox 2 is coming, to kind of pump it up, build a little bit more excitement towards it, and even just remind people that these games exist. One of the biggest omissions, in my opinion, when we first got SNES games on here was the absence of the Donkey Kong Country series. Obviously, those games are huge fan favorites. They need to be in there, but they probably want to do them in their own announcement like this, where they can come out and say, hey, now Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 are all playable on Switch. Maybe they tie them to the announcement of a new upcoming Donkey Kong game, who knows? But it is understandable why they want to keep that in their back pocket. Even adding these entire systems like they did for Super Nintendo games, do not think they just wanted to add these on the anniversary to celebrate the anniversary. No, the anniversary of Nintendo Switch Online also means all the people who signed in at the beginning, their subscriptions were coming to an end and they had to make the decision whether or not to re-up. So they use Super Nintendo games as an incentive to get people to stay subscribed, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that in the future. If Nintendo 64 games are used to celebrate the second year of Nintendo Online, and GameCube games are used to celebrate the third year, I could very well see that happening as they use these new libraries as a way to keep people subscribed. And I don't think in those terms, in terms of like year one, they're in that bad of a place as we head into 2020, and I don't really mind the staggering of releases, but I think it all started too late and just hasn't been happening frequently, more so consistently enough. Like if this all started when the Switch launched and played out similarly, like if we were actually about to celebrate the third year of Nintendo Switch Online, we'd be a lot further along with the releases and probably have other consoles by now. But instead, it's like I'm left here wondering if we'll even see GameCube games before a successor to the Switch launches, which would be pretty lame in my opinion. Like obviously, are the other consoles, N64 and GameCube, coming anytime soon? And also very importantly, will we see a price hike for them? I was surprised, I did mention, I was surprised we didn't see any increase in cost for the SNES. Not necessarily like they had to increase the entire price of the service, but maybe a different tier I was expecting to get access to the Super Nintendo games. And I guess that could continue with other consoles, but I find it even harder to believe as they add more consoles. Like that would be insane value if they kept it at $20 a year and you were getting N64, GameCube games, maybe even Wii games. That'd be just crazy. But yeah, I think the lack of transparency here has also been an issue. Like, Nintendo should be more open with at least what their immediate plans with the service are, rather than just adding SNES games and then going dark on us immediately after and then emerging 3 months after to be like, oh, don't worry, we didn't forget about this. Yeah, even with the current systems we have on the service, we just went 3 months, didn't get any announcements until just now, and does that mean we're not getting more games for another 3 months? Or are we going back to monthly releases now? This stuff shouldn't be hard to communicate with players, and I think it would further help the reception of this service. Myself, overall, I would say Nintendo has been failing with the classic games offering on Switch. Of course, we had nothing until the service launched and we only had NES games, and then we only got SNES games a couple of months ago. That all took way too long in my opinion, but they are clearly doing better now. We do have those games, and it's kind of hard to judge, where we're at without knowledge of where we're going. Now, to be clear, again, I think the value of the service is fine. Having access to all these games for $20 a year, many of which I would have bought individually, is solid, and of course that's really a supplemental thing to the whole playing games online and all that. But that doesn't make up, in my opinion, with it lagging so far behind with what Nintendo accomplished on older hardware. As I mentioned, I see the reasoning behind some of these decisions, but just because I can make sense of some of these things doesn't excuse them either. Hopefully the releases will become more regular going forward. I think we need to see N64 games at least sometime next year, or that will be pretty bad. Again, are we supposed to wait for Nintendo's next system for some of these other libraries to start becoming available? Games that we had in the mid-2000s on the Wii. And also with that in mind, we have to hope that this doesn't restart again with a new system. Even if we do get like a Switch 2 in a few years, they better not try and start from the beginning again. That would be really terrible. But if we do start to see some consistency going forward, if they keep that price at $20 a year, even with just like N64, they could really make this thing great. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on Nintendo's online classic games offerings in the comments. What do you think about them as they stand, and where would you like to see them be going forward? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of the state of classic games on Nintendo Switch. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and if you want to keep the conversation going, hit me up on Twitter at JohnnyZakari, and join my Discord, ChiGuy and Friends, link to both in the description below, and as always, thanks for watching.